She bit through her lip to keep from screaming as they dragged her onto the auction block, her newborn daughter still wet against her chest. Blood soaked through her thin dress. Snow fell on her bare shoulders, and 50 men bid on her body like she was livestock. Sold. $200. The word sealed her fate, or so she thought, because the man who bought her that frozen December night didn't want a servant, a wife, or a possession. He wanted something far more dangerous to give her back her life. Stay until the end and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Traikie, Clara Josephine Whitmore. Josie, to anyone who'd ever bothered to learn her name, felt the first contraction hit like a knife through her spine. She didn't cry out. She'd learned that lesson years ago. "Move it," the guard growled, shoving her forward through the snow. "Auction starts in 20 minutes. Can't have you holding up the line." Josie stumbled, one hand pressed against the rough wooden wall of the holding pen, the other cradling the swell of her belly. 8 months. She was supposed to have 4 more weeks, but the baby had other plans, and babies didn't care about auction schedules. "Please," the word scraped out of her throat. "I need to lie down. Something's wrong." "Ain't nothing wrong with you that won't wait." The guard, a thick man named Harlan with tobacco-stained teeth, grabbed her arm and yanked her upright. "You're lot 16. 15 more minutes and you're someone else's problem." Another contraction seized her, and this time, Josie couldn't stop the gasp that escaped. Warm fluid soaked through her thin dress, and she knew. The baby was coming. Here. Now. In a livestock holding pen in the middle of a Wyoming blizzard. "God Almighty," Harlan muttered, finally noticing. "You're dropping the thing right here. I can't stop it." Josie's voice came out strangled. "Please, just give me somewhere." "No time." Harlan was already backing away, disgust on his face. "Stay put. I'll get Doc." He left her there alone in the dim pen with the snow swirling through the gaps in the wooden slats. Josie sank to her knees on the frozen straw, her breath coming in short bursts. She'd been through hell before. 4 years of marriage to a man who used her like furniture. 2 years of being passed from owner to owner. Countless nights of swallowing screams so they wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction. But this giving birth alone in a cattle pen while men outside bid on women like horses, this was a new kind of hell. She didn't know how long she labored. Time blurred into a haze of pain and cold, and the desperate primal need to push. Someone came eventually, not a real doctor, just an old man with whiskey on his breath who told her to get on with it, and stood watching like she was calving livestock. When the baby finally came small and red and furious, Josie reached for her with shaking hands. "Girl?" The old man grunted. "Alive. Good enough." He wiped the baby carelessly with a rag and dropped her onto Josie's chest. "They'll want you on the block in 5 minutes. Clean yourself up." Then he was gone, and Josie was alone with the tiny creature wailing against her skin. "Shh," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Shh, little one. I've got you. I've got you." The baby quieted, her small fist curling around Josie's finger with surprising strength. For one heartbeat, everything else fell away. The auction, the cold, the chain of owners that had defined her life for 8 years. There was only this, her daughter alive, breathing hers. "I'll keep you safe," Josie breathed. "I promise, whatever it takes, I'll keep you safe." She didn't know yet that she was making a promise she couldn't keep. They came for her 10 minutes later. "On your feet." Harlan was back, his lip curled in disgust at the blood on her dress. "Block's ready." "I just gave birth." Josie's arms tightened around the baby. "I can barely stand." "Not my problem. Get up or I'll drag you up." Josie got up. Her legs shook. Her body screamed in protest. But she'd learned long ago that compliance was survival, and survival was all that mattered now. Not for her, for the tiny life pressed against her chest. The auction yard was a nightmare of torchlight and snow and shouting men. A makeshift platform had been erected in the center of the yard, and Josie watched as woman after woman was paraded across it, their prices called out like cattle weights. Lot 14 sold $150. Lot 15 young and healthy good teeth do I hear $100. The crowd was mostly men ranchers, miners, businessmen from the nearby towns. Some looked uncomfortable, shuffling their feet and avoiding eye contact. Most didn't. Most watched with the calculating eyes of men evaluating merchandise. Josie held her daughter tighter. Lot 16, the auctioneer bellowed. Prime stock gentleman. 22 years old, proven breeder, just delivered a healthy girl not an hour ago. Strong, obedient, good for labor, or... He paused, letting the implication hang. Whatever else you might need. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Josie felt bile rise in her throat. Harlan shoved her forward, and she stumbled up the wooden steps onto the platform. The torchlight hit her face, blinding her momentarily. Snow landed on her bare shoulders, melting against her fevered skin. Starting bid $100. Do I hear 100? 100, someone called. 120, 130. The bids climbed. Josie stood frozen. Her arms wrapped around her baby, her mind somewhere far away. She'd been here before, not this exact place, but places like it. The auction in Louisiana, where she'd been sold at 14. The private sale in Missouri at 18. The contract transfer in Kansas last spring. Each time she'd told herself it couldn't get worse. Each time she'd been wrong. 180. Do I hear 190? The baby stirred, making a soft sound that cut through Josie's numbness. She looked down at her daughter's face, at the tiny features scrunched in displeasure at the cold and noise. I'm so sorry, she thought. I'm so sorry you were born to a mother who can't protect you. 200. The voice came from the back of the crowd, low and quiet, but somehow cutting through the noise like a blade. The bidding stopped. Josie squinted against the torchlight, trying to see who had spoken. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. She couldn't see his face. 200 from the gentleman in back. The auctioneer called surprise in his voice. Do I hear 210? Silence. 200 was too high for a woman who'd just given birth, who was bleeding and weak, and couldn't possibly be put to work for weeks. 200 going once, going twice, sold. The gavel cracked. Josie flinched. Sold. Again. Always sold. Harlan grabbed her arm and half-dragged her down the steps toward the payment table. Her legs buckled twice on the way, but he didn't let her fall. Merchandise didn't get damaged before delivery. The man in the dark coat was already at the table, counting out bills with methodical precision. Josie watched his hands, large, scarred, calloused from work. Hands that could hurt her easily if he chose. They all choose eventually. Here's your purchase, Harlan announced, shoving Josie forward. 1 female, 1 infant. Papers are in order. The man didn't respond immediately. He finished counting, slid the money across the table, and waited while the clerk verified the amount. Only then did he turn to look at Josie. She got her first real glimpse of his face. Older than she'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with weathered features and eyes the color of old whiskey. There was weariness in those eyes, and something else she couldn't identify. Not cruelty, not lust. Something sadder. Can you walk? His voice was low, rough, like he didn't use it much. Josie nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. My wagon's this way. Let's get you out of the cold. He didn't touch her. Didn't grab her arm or shove her forward, just turned and started walking, trusting her to follow. Josie followed. What choice did she have? Home. The wagon was waiting at the edge of the yard, hitched to a pair of sturdy horses that stamped and snorted in the cold. The man helped her up onto the bench, carefully giving her time to settle the baby before releasing her arm. Then he climbed up beside her, took the reins and drove away from the auction yard without a word. Josie sat rigid, every muscle tense, waiting for something to happen, for him to explain what he wanted, for him to reach for her or the baby or something. Men always wanted something, but he just drove. Eyes forward, jaw set silent. The snow fell harder as they left the town behind, blanketing the world in white. Josie shivered her thin dress, no protection against the Wyoming winter. The baby whimpered against her chest. "There's a blanket behind the seat," the man said without looking at her. "Wrap yourselves up before you freeze." Josie twisted, found the blanket thick wool well made, and pulled it around her shoulders, tucking it over the baby. Warmth seeped into her frozen bones, and she almost cried at the simple relief of it. They drove for what felt like hours through the white wilderness. Finally, the man pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a small cabin. Not much to look at. Rough-hewn logs, a stone chimney, a covered porch, but lamplight glowed through the window, and smoke rose from the chimney. "This is home," the man said. "Come inside. You need food and rest." He helped her down from the wagon, then led her to the cabin door. Josie hesitated on the threshold, some instinct screaming at her to run. But run where? Into the blizzard. With a newborn in her arms, she stepped inside. The cabin was small but clean. A fire crackled in the hearth. A bed stood in one corner, a table and chairs in another. The air smelled of wood smoke and coffee. "Sit," the man said, gesturing to a chair by the fire. "I'll make you something to eat." Josie sat clutching her baby, watching him move around the cabin with quiet efficiency. He put water on to heat, cut bread, sliced cheese. His movements were unhurried but purposeful, like a man who'd lived alone long enough to have a system. When he set a plate in front of her, Josie stared at it like it might bite. "Eat," he said. "You need strength." "Why?" The word scraped out before she could stop it. "Why did you buy me? What do you want?" He sat down across from her, his weathered face unreadable. For a long moment he didn't answer. "My name's Samuel Thornton," he said finally. "Folks call me Eli. I own a cattle ranch about 10 miles north of here." "That doesn't answer my question." "No." A ghost of something amusement respect flickered in his eyes. "It doesn't." Josie waited, her heart pounding. Eli leaned back in his chair, his gaze dropping to the baby in her arms. "What's her name?" "She doesn't have one yet." "You should give her one. Names matter." "Answer my question." Josie's voice came out harder than she intended. "What do you want from me?" Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I had a sister once, Abigail. She was 12 when they took her. Came to town with our mama, and when mama turned around, Abby was gone." His jaw tightened. "Never found her. Never knew what happened. Spent 20 years wondering if she was alive somewhere, if she was suffering, if someone saved her, or—" He stopped, swallowed. "I couldn't save Abby. Couldn't find her, couldn't help her. But I can help you." He met Josie's eyes. "You owe me nothing. Not gratitude, not work, not anything. You're free. Legally completely free. When you're strong enough to travel, I'll take you wherever you want to go." Josie stared at him, waiting for the trap. There was always a trap. "Why should I believe you?" "You shouldn't." Eli stood, moving to the stove. "You don't know me. For all you know, I'm lying through my teeth and planning something terrible." He poured 2 cups of coffee, set one in front of her. "But I'm not, and time will prove that if you give it the chance. I've heard promises before. I'm sure you have. This isn't a promise." He sat back down, cradling his coffee. "It's a fact. You're free. The papers I signed say so, and no one can change that now. What you do with that freedom is up to you." The baby stirred, making a soft, mewling sound. Josie automatically rocked her mind spinning. Free. She'd dreamed of that word for 8 years, fantasized about it in the dark hours before dawn. But she'd never actually believed it could happen. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Men don't just... they don't..." "Some men don't." Eli's voice was quiet. "I'm trying to be different." Kyo. That night, Eli gave Josie the bed. He spread a bedroll by the fire for himself, close enough to keep watch, but far enough to give her space. She lay awake for hours, the baby nestled beside her, listening to the fire crackle and the wind howl outside. Every instinct screamed that this was a trick. That kindness was a weapon men used to lower your guard before they struck. She'd learned that lesson with her first husband, who'd been gentle as a lamb during their courtship, and a monster once the door closed behind them. But Eli didn't come to the bed, didn't try to touch her, didn't demand anything. When Josie finally drifted off near dawn, exhausted beyond endurance, she dreamed of open fields and sunshine and a life where no one owned her. She woke to the smell of bacon. Eli was at the stove, his back to her, humming something tuneless under his breath. Morning light filtered through the frost-covered window. The fire had been built up the cabin warm and cozy. "How do you like your eggs?" he asked without turning around. Josie sat up slowly, wincing at the soreness in her body. Anyway is fine." "Over easy it is." He cooked breakfast with the same quiet efficiency he'd shown the night before. Bacon, eggs, biscuits that weren't half bad. He set a plate in front of her and ate his own standing at the counter, giving her the table. "The baby needs a name," he said between bites. "Can't keep calling her the baby." Josie looked down at her daughter, who was awake now, her blue-gray eyes blinking in the morning light. She thought about all the things she wanted for this child: safety, love, a chance at a life better than her own. "Hope," she said quietly. "Her name is Hope." "Hope." Eli nodded, something softening in his expression. "That's a good name. Strong." After breakfast, he showed her around the cabin such as it was. The privy out back, the well, the small barn where he kept his horse, and a milk goat. "The goat's for milk," he explained. "Figure Hope will need it. I ain't much good with babies, but I reckon I can learn." "Why are you doing this?" The question burst out of Josie again. "And don't tell me about your sister. That's not enough. People don't spend $200 and give up their bed for a stranger just because they lost someone." Eli was quiet for a moment, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I lost my wife, Sarah, and my daughter. She was 2 days old when—" He stopped, his jaw working. "When I couldn't protect them." Josie waited, not breathing. "After that, I drank myself half to death. Spent 3 years trying to die without having the courage to do it properly." He turned to face her. "Then I met a preacher who told me something that stuck. He said I had 2 choices: I could keep drowning in what I'd lost, or I could try to build something new, something that honored them instead of dishonoring their memory with my waste of a life. So you started buying women at auctions?" "No." Something like a smile ghosted across his face. "You're the first. Saw the auction notice when I was in town for supplies. Thought about walking past, minding my own business." He shrugged. "Couldn't do it. Kept thinking about Abby, about Sarah, about all the women who never had anyone show up for them." Josie's throat tightened. "I don't know how to trust this." "You don't have to. Not yet." Eli met her eyes squarely. "Just rest. Heal. Get to know the place. If you decide you want to leave, I'll take you anywhere you want to go. If you decide to stay—" He paused. "Well, I could use help around the ranch come spring. I'd pay fair wages. But that's your choice. Everything from here on out is your choice." Days passed, then weeks. Josie waited for the other shoe to drop, for Eli's patience to run out, for his true nature to emerge, for the nightmare she'd been expecting to finally begin. It never did. He gave her space, cooked meals and left them for her without expecting conversation, built a proper cradle for Hope carved from pine and sanded smooth, showed her how the stove worked, where the supplies were, how to bar the door at night, not because he expected trouble, but because she'd feel safer knowing she could. Slowly, against her will, against every instinct screaming at her to stay guarded, Josie began to relax. She started helping with small tasks, washing dishes, sweeping floors, tending the goat. Not because Eli asked, but because she needed something to do, some way to prove she wasn't useless. He accepted her help without comment, just nodded and carried on with his own work. One evening, about 3 weeks after her arrival, Josie found herself actually talking. "Hope smiled today," she said over supper. "At least I think it was a smile. Might have been gas." Eli's weathered face creased into something that was almost a grin. "Probably gas, but we'll call it a smile. She's getting bigger, stronger. Babies do that. They're resilient." He took a bite of stew. "Like their mamas." Josie looked down at her bowl. "I'm not resilient. I'm just still here." "That's the same thing." Eli's voice was quiet. "Resilience ain't about being tough. It's about getting up when you've got every reason to stay down. You've done that more times than most people ever have to." Josie didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing, just kept eating, trying to ignore the warmth blooming in her chest. The turning point came on a cold night in early January. Josie woke to the sound of screaming, raw, anguished cries that tore through the darkness. For a terrified moment, she thought someone was attacking the cabin. Then she realized the screams were coming from Eli. He was on his bedroll by the fire, thrashing in his sleep, his face contorted in nightmare agony. Words tumbled from his lips. "Sarah, no, God, please, Sarah." Josie hesitated. Every instinct told her not to wake a man in the grip of terror, but she couldn't just lie there and listen to him suffer. She crossed to him, carefully knelt beside the bedroll. "Eli, Eli, wake up." He didn't respond, still caught in whatever horror his mind had conjured. "Eli." She touched his shoulder the first time she'd voluntarily touched him since the wagon ride. "You're dreaming. Wake up." His eyes flew open, wild and unfocused. For a heartbeat, he looked at her without recognition, his hand shooting out to grab her wrist with bruising force. Then awareness flooded back. His grip loosened instantly. "God!" His voice was wrecked. "I'm sorry. Did I hurt you?" "I'm fine." Josie pulled her hand back slowly. "You were having a nightmare." Eli sat up, running a shaking hand over his face. In the firelight, she could see the sweat on his brow, the tremor in his shoulders. He looked broken, human, nothing like the composed, steady man she'd been watching for weeks. "Sorry I woke you," he muttered. "Go back to sleep. I'll be quiet." "Does that happen often?" He didn't answer for a long moment. Then, "Often enough." "About your wife?" Another pause. "And my daughter. The attack. I wasn't there when—" His voice cracked. "I was supposed to protect them. I was 3 miles away checking fence lines while they—" He stopped, his jaw clenching so hard, Josie heard his teeth grind. She should go back to bed. She knew that. This wasn't her business, wasn't her problem. But something held her there, some recognition of a pain she understood all too well. "I couldn't protect my baby's father," she said quietly. "Not that I wanted to. He was the one who hurt me. But sometimes I dream about the things he did, and I wake up thinking I'm still there, still trapped." Eli's eyes found hers in the firelight. "It doesn't stop," Josie continued. "The dreams, the fear. But it gets quieter, eventually. At least, that's what I tell myself." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eli said, "You should go back to sleep. Baby'll be up soon." Josie stood. "Will you be all right?" "I'm always all right." It wasn't true, and they both knew it. But Josie understood the need to pretend. She went back to bed. But before she lay down, she said, "Thank you for not being what I expected." In the darkness, she heard Eli's quiet reply, "Thank you for not running." The next morning, something had shifted between them. Not dramatically, Eli still kept his distance, still gave her space. But there was an understanding now, a mutual recognition of shared damage. Over breakfast, Eli said, "Storm's clearing up. I need to check on the cattle in the north pasture. You and Hope will be all right here." It was the first time he'd asked instead of assumed. Josie nodded. "We'll be fine." He was gone most of the day. Josie used the time to explore the cabin more thoroughly, to feed and change Hope, to stand at the window and watch the snow-covered landscape glitter in the winter sun. It was beautiful here. Harsh and unforgiving, but beautiful in a way that spoke to something deep in her soul, open, free. When Eli returned at dusk, he brought a surprise, a small wooden box filled with fabric scraps, needles, and thread. "Found these in the barn," he said. "Belonged to Sarah. Figured you might want to make something for Hope. Better than that one gown she's been wearing since—" He stopped, looking uncomfortable. Josie took the box, her throat tight. "Thank you. Ain't nothing. Just fabric." It wasn't nothing. They both knew it. But Josie let him pretend, and he let her pretend she wasn't crying as she sorted through his dead wife's sewing supplies. That night, after Hope was asleep, Josie sat by the fire and began to sew. Eli sat across from her, carving something small from a piece of pine. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. For the first time in 8 years, Josie felt something she barely recognized. She felt safe. But safety, she would soon learn, was a fragile thing. And there were men in the world who made their living destroying it. 3 days later, the stranger rode in from the east, asking questions about a runaway woman with a newborn baby. And everything Josie had begun to believe in started to crumble. The stranger's name was Virgil Kane, and he rode into Eli's property like he owned it. Josie saw him first. She was at the window, Hope cradled against her chest, watching the afternoon light fade over the snow when the dark shape emerged from the tree line. A single rider, moving slow and deliberate, his horse picking through the drifts with practiced ease. Her blood turned to ice. "Eli!" Her voice came out strangled. "Someone's coming!" He was beside her in 3 strides, his hand already moving to the rifle above the door. One look at the rider, and his jaw tightened. "Get in the back room. Take Hope. Don't come out until I tell you." "Who is it?" "Don't know yet. Go." Josie went. She pressed herself against the wall of the small storage room, Hope clutched to her chest, her heart hammering so loud she was sure the rider could hear it from outside. Through the gap in the door, she watched Eli step onto the porch, rifle held loose but ready. The rider pulled up 20 feet from the cabin. He was thin, wiry, with a face like a hatchet, and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His smile was the kind that never reached past his mouth. "Afternoon?" the stranger called out. "Name's Virgil Kane. I'm looking for someone." "That's so." Eli's voice was flat, giving nothing away. "Young woman. 22, brown hair, blue-gray eyes. Had a baby with her newborn girl." Kane shifted in his saddle, still smiling that empty smile. "Word is, she was sold at the auction in town about a month back. Word is, you're the one who bought her." Word travels fast. In my line of work, it has to. Kane's eyes swept over the cabin, the barn, the windows. Josie pressed herself further into the shadows. "I represent a gentleman named Cornelius Wade. He has a legal contract for that woman's services. Predates your purchase by 3 years. Makes your transaction invalid." Eli didn't move. "Never heard of him." "Most folks haven't. Mr. Wade prefers to keep a low profile, but he's a patient man, and he's been looking for this particular piece of property for quite some time." Kane's smile widened. "The woman, I mean, not the baby. Though I understand the baby might have some value too, depending on—" "Get off my land." The words cut through the air like a blade. Kane's smile flickered. "Now there's no need for unpleasantness. Mr. Wade is a reasonable man. He's prepared to compensate you for your trouble. $300, that's 50% more than you paid." "I said get off my land." Kane's eyes hardened. The pleasant mask slipped, revealing something cold underneath. "Mr. Thornton, I'm trying to be civil here. But I should warn you, Mr. Wade doesn't take kindly to people who interfere with his property. He has friends in high places, judges, sheriffs, men who can make your life very difficult if you choose to be uncooperative. Eli raised the rifle, not pointing it at Cain, not yet, just letting him see it clearly. Here's what I know, Eli said quietly. I know I bought a woman fair and legal at a public auction. I know I have papers that say so signed and witnessed. I know there ain't no woman on this property except the one I married 6 years ago, God rest her soul. His voice didn't waver. And I know you're trespassing on private property. So I'm going to give you one more chance to turn that horse around and ride out the way you came. After that, things get unfriendly. Cain stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed a dry, humorless sound. You're making a mistake, Mr. Thornton. A big one. He gathered his reins. Mr. Wade will hear about this. And when he comes to collect what's his, I don't think you'll find him as patient as me. He turned his horse and rode back toward the tree line. Eli stood on the porch rifle ready, watching until the stranger disappeared from sight. Only then did he lower the weapon. Josie. His voice was quiet. You can come out now. She emerged from the back room on shaking legs, hope whimpering against her chest. Who was that? Who's Cornelius Wade? I don't know. Eli's face was grim. But I intend to find out. Josie's knees buckled. She sank into the nearest chair, clutching Hope so tight the baby started to cry. 8 years of running. 8 years of thinking she might finally be safe, only to have it torn away again. I should go, she whispered. I should leave before they come back. I'm putting you in danger. No. You don't understand. These men, they don't stop. They never stop. I've seen what they do to people who get in their way. Josie. Eli knelt in front of her, his weathered face serious. Look at me. She looked. I ain't letting anyone take you. Not Cain, not Wade, not anyone. You hear me? You can't promise that. I ain't promising. I'm telling you a fact. His jaw set hard. I've already lost everyone I ever loved. I'm not losing anyone else. Not while I'm still breathing. Josie stared at him, this quiet man who'd bought her freedom and asked for nothing, who'd given her his bed and his food and his protection, without expecting anything in return. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But she'd believed before, and belief had only ever led to pain. What do we do? She asked. First, we don't panic. Cain was fishing. He doesn't know for certain you're here. Eli stood, moving to the window to scan the property. Second, I ride into town tomorrow, talk to some folks, find out who this Wade is and what we're dealing with. And if he's as powerful as Cain said, Eli turned to look at her. Then we fight anyway. That night, Josie couldn't sleep. She lay in the bed with Hope beside her, listening to the wind howl outside her mind, racing with worst-case scenarios. Cain's face kept swimming before her eyes. That empty smile. Those calculating eyes. She knew men like him, had been owned by men like him. They didn't give up. They didn't show mercy. They took what they wanted and destroyed anyone who stood in their way. And now Eli was in their crosshairs because of her. Around midnight, she heard him get up from his bedroll. Heard the cabin door open and close quietly. She slipped out of bed, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and followed. She found him on the porch, sitting on the steps, despite the bitter cold, staring out at the moonlit snow. He didn't turn when she came out, but he shifted over to make room. Can't sleep either, he asked. No. She sat beside him, the cold biting through the blanket. I keep thinking about what happens if they come back. They'll come back. Men like that always do. Then why didn't you just tell them where I was? Why risk yourself? Eli was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. You remember what I told you about my sister, about Abby? Yes. After she was taken, I spent years blaming myself. If I'd been with her and Mama that day, if I'd paid more attention, if I'd fought harder to find her. He shook his head slowly. I made myself crazy with if-onlys. And then one day I realized something. All that guilt, all that self-blame, it didn't bring Abby back. It just made me useless to everyone else who needed me. He turned to look at her, his eyes dark in the moonlight. I couldn't save my sister. I couldn't save my wife or my daughter. But I can save you. I can stand between you and the men who want to hurt you. His jaw tightened. And I'll be damned if I let another woman suffer because I was too scared to fight. Josie felt tears burning her eyes. I'm not worth dying for. That's where you're wrong. Eli's voice was fierce. You're worth everything. You and Hope both. And anyone who says different can go straight to hell. They sat in silence for a while, watching the moon trace its path across the sky. Finally, Josie said, I've never had anyone fight for me before. Then you've known the wrong people. I've known the only people I was allowed to know, owners, masters, men who saw me as property. She pulled the blanket tighter. You're the first person who's ever looked at me like I was human. You are human. More human than most folks I've met. Josie didn't know what made her do it. Maybe the fear. Maybe the exhaustion. Maybe something else entirely. But she reached out and took his hand. He went very still. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. For being different. Eli's fingers curled around hers, warm and steady. Don't thank me yet. We've got a fight ahead of us. I know. But whatever happens, I want you to know. She stopped struggling for words. I want you to know that you've given me something I never thought I'd have again. What's that? Hope. Not just my daughter. Real hope. For the first time in 8 years. Eli's grip tightened. In the moonlight, she could see the emotion working across his weathered face. Then we'll protect it, he said. Both of us. Together. The next morning, Eli rode into town before dawn. Josie spent the day in a state of constant tension, jumping at every sound, watching the tree line for any sign of riders. Hope picked up on her anxiety, fussing and crying more than usual, refusing to be soothed. By the time Eli returned at dusk, Josie was wound so tight she nearly collapsed with relief at the sound of his horse. What did you find out? She demanded before he was even through the door. Eli's face was grim. He hung up his coat, stamped the snow from his boots, and sat down heavily at the table. Cornelius Wade is real, and he's worse than I thought. Josie sank into the chair across from him. Tell me. He's a land speculator from Denver, made his fortune buying up debt and foreclosing on desperate folks, but that's just the legal side. Eli's jaw tightened. Word is, he also runs a network of contract brides and indentured servants, buys up women's debts, then forces them to work for him until they've paid it off. Except the debt never gets paid off. He just keeps adding charges until they die working for him. Josie's voice was hollow. I know. I've seen it. Eli looked at her sharply. You know Wade? Not personally, but I know the system. Her hands twisted in her lap. My first husband sold my debt to a man like Wade after he died. That's how I ended up on the auction circuit. Passed from owner to owner, each one adding their own charges, until the debt was so high I couldn't have paid it off in 10 lifetimes. Then Wade might have legitimate paperwork. There's nothing legitimate about it. Josie's voice cracked. They forge documents, pay off judges, create debts that never existed. It's all legal on paper. But it's slavery. Just slavery with better accounting. Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I talked to the sheriff. And? He's no help. Either he's in Wade's pocket or he's scared of him. Either way, we can't count on the law. Josie laughed bitterly. The law was never on my side. Then we'll find another way. Eli leaned forward. I've got some money saved. Enough to pay off whatever contract Wade thinks he holds. If we can get ahead of this, it won't work. Men like Wade don't want money. They want control. They want to prove that no one can defy them. Josie's voice dropped. He'll come for me because I ran, because I dared to think I could be free, and he'll destroy anyone who helped me just to make an example. Then let him try. Eli. No, listen to me. He reached across the table and took her hands. I've spent 8 years hiding from life. 8 years convinced I didn't deserve happiness because I couldn't save the people I loved. I'm done hiding. His eyes burned into hers. Whatever comes, we face it together. You and me. That's how it's going to be. Josie wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was being foolish, that she wasn't worth the trouble, that he should just let her go and save himself. But looking into his eyes, she saw something she'd never seen before. Not pity, not obligation, just fierce, unwavering determination. Okay, she whispered. Together. 3 days later, the boy appeared. Josie was gathering eggs from the chicken coop when she heard a sound in the barn. Soft, almost imperceptible. But after weeks of living on high alert, she'd learned to notice everything. She set down the egg basket and moved toward the barn, her heart pounding. Through the half-open door, she could see one of the horse stalls. Something was moving inside it. Josie grabbed the pitchfork leaning against the wall and crept closer. Her hands were shaking. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get Eli to not take chances. But then she heard it. A whimper. Small. Frightened. Human. She stepped into the stall and found him huddled in the corner, half buried in hay. A boy. Maybe 5 years old, maybe younger. It was hard to tell with how thin he was. His clothes were rags. His feet were bare and bleeding. His eyes, when he looked up at her, were huge with terror. Please. His voice was barely a whisper. Please don't hurt me. Josie dropped the pitchfork like it burned. Oh, sweetheart. No, I'm not going to hurt you. She knelt down slowly, keeping her movements gentle, her voice soft. The boy pressed himself further into the corner, shaking violently. What's your name? How did you get here? He didn't answer, just stared at her with those enormous, haunted eyes. It's okay. You're safe now. I promise. Josie held out her hand, palm up, the way you'd approach a frightened animal. Are you hungry? Cold? The boy's gaze dropped to her hand. He didn't move, didn't speak. But something in his expression shifted. A tiny crack in the wall of terror. I'm going to get help, Josie said. I'm going to get my friend Eli. He's kind. He won't hurt you either. Can you wait here? A tiny nod. Almost imperceptible. Josie found Eli in the north pasture and brought him back at a run. When he saw the boy, something changed in his face. A pain so deep it stole his breath. Jesus, he muttered. He's half frozen. I don't know where he came from. He won't talk. Eli moved into the stall slowly, carefully. The boy's eyes tracked him with fear, but he didn't try to run. Hey there, son. Eli's voice was softer than Josie had ever heard it. You're safe now. Nobody here's going to hurt you. He shrugged off his coat and held it out. This'll warm you up. Can I put it around you? The boy hesitated. Then slowly he nodded. Eli wrapped the coat around the small shoulders with infinite gentleness. The boy flinched at the touch, but didn't pull away. Can you tell me your name? Eli asked. Silence. That's okay. You don't have to talk if you're not ready. Eli sat down in the hay, making himself small, unthreatening. I'm Eli. This is Josie. We live here. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. The boy's lower lip trembled, and then, in a voice so quiet they barely heard it, Maddie. Maddie. Eli smiled gently. That's a good name. You hungry, Maddie? Another tiny nod. They brought him inside, wrapped him in blankets by the fire, fed him bread and soup that he devoured like he hadn't eaten in days. He probably hadn't. His ribs showed through his skin. Old bruises mottled his arms. Josie watched him eat, her heart breaking. She knew that look, that terror, that desperate need to make yourself invisible. "Where did you come from?" she asked softly. Maddie's hands tightened on his bowl. He didn't answer. "You can tell us," Eli said. "Whatever happened, it's not your fault, and nobody here is going to make you go back." The boy looked up at him. In his eyes, Josie saw the same war she'd fought in herself, the desperate need to trust fighting against years of learning that trust only led to pain. "Mining camp," Maddie finally whispered. "Mama worked there. She got sick. Then she died." "And your father?" "Don't got one." The words were flat rehearsed, like he'd said them 1,000 times before. "Mama said he left before I was born." "What happened after your mama died?" Maddie's face went blank. That terrible protective blankness Josie recognized all too well. "They said I had to work, pay off Mama's debts." His voice dropped even lower. "I couldn't do it good enough. So they hit me. A lot." Josie felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't try to stop them. "I ran away," Maddie continued. "Walked real far. Then I couldn't walk anymore. Found the barn." He looked up at Eli with those huge, haunted eyes. "Please don't send me back. Please. I'll work hard. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't send me back." Eli was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Maddie, listen to me. Are you listening?" The boy nodded. "Nobody is sending you anywhere. You're going to stay right here with us. You're going to eat real food and sleep in a real bed, and nobody is ever going to hit you again." Eli's jaw clenched. "That's a promise. Do you understand?" Maddie stared at him, searching his face for the lie, for the trap. He didn't find one. Something crumbled in the boy's expression. The wall he'd built so carefully, the armor he'd worn to survive it, cracked. And then he was crying great heaving sobs that shook his whole body. Eli pulled him close, held him against his chest, let him cry. Josie knelt beside them, her hand on Maddie's back, her own tears falling freely. "You're safe," Eli murmured. "You're safe now. We've got you." That night, after Maddie had finally fallen asleep in a nest of blankets by the fire, Josie and Eli sat at the table in exhausted silence. "He can't go back," Josie said. "Whatever it takes, we can't let them have him." "I know. But if Wade's men are already looking for me, and now we've got a runaway boy from a mining camp." She pressed her hands to her temples. "We're collecting trouble, Eli, building a target on our backs." "Maybe." Eli's voice was quiet. "Or maybe we're building something else." "What do you mean?" He was silent for a moment. Then, "I spent 8 years alone. Convinced myself I was better off that way. Safer. Couldn't lose anyone if I didn't let anyone in." He looked at her. "Then you showed up. And hope. And now Maddie. And I'm starting to think maybe safe isn't the same as alive." Josie understood what he meant. She'd spent 8 years protecting herself by not caring, by not hoping, by keeping everyone at arm's length. But here in this cabin, something had changed. "We're a mess," she said. "All of us. Broken in different ways." "Yeah." Eli reached across the table and took her hand. "But broken things can be mended, if you've got the right people." Josie looked at their joined hands. At Maddie sleeping by the fire. At Hope in her cradle making soft baby sounds. 3 weeks ago she'd been alone. Owned. Hopeless. Now she had a daughter, a friend, a damaged little boy who needed her. And something else. Something she was afraid to name. "What are we doing, Eli?" she whispered. "What are we building here?" He squeezed her hand. "I don't know yet, but whatever it is, I think it might be worth fighting for." Before she could respond, Maddie stirred in his sleep. His small voice cut through the darkness. "Papa?" Eli went very still. Josie saw the emotion flash across his face, pain and longing, and something that looked almost like hope. "I'm here," he said quietly. "Go back to sleep, son. I'm right here." Maddie settled his breathing, evening out. And Josie watched Eli watch him, and she saw in his face everything he couldn't say. A man who'd lost his family finding pieces of a new one. A woman who'd never had a family starting to build one. And a little boy who'd never known safety finally learning what it felt like. 3 broken people huddled together against the cold. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And as the fire crackled and the wind howled outside, Josie made a silent promise. Whatever came next, Wade Kane, all the darkness hunting them, she wouldn't run. Not this time. This time, she'd stay and fight. The days after Maddie's arrival settled into a fragile rhythm. Josie found herself watching the boy, constantly marveling at how quickly children could adapt, how desperately they clung to any scrap of kindness thrown their way. Maddie didn't speak much. He followed Eli around the ranch like a shadow, watching everything with those enormous eyes flinching whenever anyone moved too fast. But slowly, impossibly slowly, the terror began to fade. He started eating without hiding food in his pockets, started sleeping through the night without screaming, started looking at Josie and Eli with something other than fear. "He called me Papa again last night," Eli said one morning, his voice rough. They were standing by the barn watching Maddie try to feed the chickens. The boy was doing it wrong, scattering the grain too fast, but neither of them corrected him. In his sleep, just whispered it. "How does that make you feel?" Eli was quiet for a long moment. "Like I'm getting a second chance I don't deserve." "Maybe none of us deserve second chances. Maybe we just get them anyway." He looked at her, then something unreadable in his weathered face. "You're starting to sound like that preacher who saved me." "Is that bad?" "No." A ghost of a smile. "No, it's not bad at all." That afternoon, while Maddie napped and Hope slept in her cradle, Josie found herself alone with Eli for the first time in days. They sat at the table, cups of coffee cooling between them, and the silence felt different, charged. "I need to tell you something," Josie said. "About my past. About who I was before. You don't owe me your history. I know, but I want you to have it." She wrapped her hands around her cup, drawing warmth from the ceramic. "My name wasn't always Clara Josephine Whitmore. When I was born, I was just Josie. No middle name, no last name worth keeping. My daddy was a drunk who gambled away everything we had, and my mama died trying to give him another son." Eli listened without interrupting. His eyes never left her face. "After Mama died, Daddy remarried. Woman named Ruth with 2 sons of her own. She hated me from the first day. Made me sleep in the barn, eat scraps, work like a mule." Josie's voice stayed flat, controlled. She'd learned long ago how to tell this story without breaking. "When I was 14, Daddy lost a card game to a man named Silas Crawford. Owed him more than we'd ever have. So he paid his debt the only way he could." "He sold you." "He sold me." The words came out steady. "Silas was 53 years old. He needed a young wife to take care of his house and his needs. Nobody asked if I wanted to go. Nobody asked anything. One day I was Josie the barn girl, and the next I was Mrs. Clara Crawford wearing a dead woman's dress and sharing a dead woman's bed." Eli's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. "Silas wasn't the worst. He hit me when I didn't move fast enough, but he wasn't cruel for cruelty's sake, just indifferent, like I was furniture that sometimes needed adjusting." She took a breath. "He died when I was 18. Heart gave out. And that's when I found out he'd been in debt too. Owed money to a man in Louisiana who collected debts the old-fashioned way. Contract servitude. They called it employment. Said I could work off what Silas owed. Said it would only take a few years." Her laugh was hollow. "It never takes a few years. They add charges for everything. Room and board, clothing, food, medical care. By the time I ran the first time, my debt had tripled." "How many times did you run?" 3. "The first time I got 2 days. The second time almost a week. The third time—" She stopped, her throat closing. "You don't have to tell me." "I want to." She forced the words out. "The third time they caught me at the border. Beat me so bad I couldn't walk for a month. Then they sold me to a man who specialized in breaking runaways. The silence that followed was deafening. That's who fathered Hope, Josie continued quietly. I don't even know his real name. He called himself Mr. Smith, kept me in a cellar for 6 months. When he found out I was pregnant, he decided I'd fetch a better price as a proven breeder and put me up for auction. And that's when I found you. That's when you found me. She finally looked up, met his eyes. So now you know. You didn't rescue some innocent farm girl who fell on hard times. You rescued a woman who's been passed around like livestock for 8 years. A woman whose body has been... Stop. Eli's voice was fierce. Don't you dare finish that sentence. Why not? It's the truth. It's what happened to you. It's not who you are. He reached across the table and took her hands. Josie, look at me. She looked. What those men did your father Silas, all of them, that says everything about them and nothing about you. You survived. You protected your baby. You kept going when most people would have given up. His grip tightened. That's who you are. Not what they did to you. Who you chose to be despite it. Tears burned her eyes. I don't know how to be anything else. I don't know how to be someone who wasn't owned. Then we figure it out together. You and me. We learn who you are when you're free. And what if I'm nobody? What if there's nothing left inside me but fear and survival? Then we start from scratch, build something new. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I've got time, I've got patience, and I ain't going anywhere. Josie wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly her whole body ached with the wanting. But 8 years of pain had taught her that wanting was dangerous. Before she could respond, Maddie's voice came from the doorway. Is Josie crying? They turned to find him standing there small and serious, his eyes full of concern. I'm okay, sweetheart. Josie wiped her face quickly. Just talking about sad things. Maddie crossed the room with that silent, cautious gait he'd developed. He stopped in front of Josie, studied her face with an intensity that seemed too old for his years. When I was sad, he said quietly, Mama used to hold me. She said, holding chases the sad away. He paused. Do you want me to hold you? Josie's heart cracked wide open. She pulled the boy into her arms, buried her face in his hair, and let herself cry. Maddie held on tight, his small arms surprisingly strong. The sad's going away, he reported solemnly. I can feel it leaving. Eli watched them, something raw and vulnerable in his expression. And Josie realized in that moment that she wasn't alone anymore. Hadn't been alone for weeks now. Somehow, without her noticing, a family had grown up around her, broken people clinging to each other. But maybe that was how all families started. The blizzard hit 3 days later. They had warning. Eli had been watching the sky for days, noting the way the clouds gathered, the way the animals grew restless. He spent every daylight hour preparing, bringing in extra firewood, checking the barn for drafts, making sure they had enough food and water to last. Could be bad, he said the night before it hit. Could be stuck inside for a week or more. Everyone needs to stay close. But even with preparation, the storm's fury was terrifying. The wind screamed around the cabin like a living thing, rattling the windows, finding every crack and gap. Snow fell so thick and fast that visibility dropped to nothing within an hour. The temperature plummeted. Josie huddled by the fire with Hope and Maddie, listening to the howling wind, trying not to think about all the things that could go wrong. Eli moved constantly, checking the fire, checking the windows, checking the door. Will the roof hold? Josie asked. Built it myself. It'll hold. What about the animals? Barn's solid. They'll be cold but alive. He sat down beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. We'll be fine, Josie. I've survived worse storms than this. Maddie pressed against her other side, trembling. I don't like the noise. I know, sweetheart. But we're safe in here. The cabin is strong. What if the bad men come? What if they come in the storm? Eli answered before Josie could. No one's traveling in this weather. Not even bad men. The storm's protecting us tonight. Matty seemed to accept this. He curled closer to Josie, his small body gradually relaxing. Hope miraculously slept through the worst of it. Josie had learned that her daughter had an almost supernatural ability to sleep through chaos, probably a survival mechanism developed in the womb, while Josie endured unspeakable things. As the night wore on and the storm showed no signs of stopping, they arranged themselves around the fire. Matty fell asleep first, exhausted from fear and the effort of staying brave. Eli covered him with an extra blanket, his movements gentle. "He's a good kid," he said quietly. "He's terrified. All the time. He just hides it well. Don't we all?" Eli sat back down beside her. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay." It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. Better than I expected. The storm, or everything else? Both. She leaned her head against his shoulder, too tired to maintain distance. A month ago, if you'd told me I'd be sitting by a fire in the middle of a blizzard with a man I trusted, I would have laughed in your face. And now I'm starting to think maybe trust isn't as stupid as I thought. Eli's arm came around her shoulders, warm and steady. "It's not stupid, just scary. Everything's scary." "Yeah." His voice was soft. "But some things are worth being scared for." They sat in silence, listening to the storm rage, drawing warmth from each other. Josie felt something shift in her chest that locked frozen place where she'd buried every soft feeling for years. It was thawing, slowly, painfully, but thawing. "Eli." "Yeah. Thank you. For everything. For buying me. For letting me stay. For taking in Matty. For—" She struggled to find words big enough. "For treating me like a person. You are a person. I know, but you're the first one who made me believe it." He turned his head and suddenly his face was very close to hers. Close enough that she could see the firelight reflected in his eyes, the silver threads in his dark hair, the way his breath caught. "Josie." "Yes." "I need to tell you something." His voice was rough, uncertain, in a way she'd never heard before. "I've been trying not to say it, trying to give you space, give you time. But I can't keep it in anymore." Her heart hammered. "What is it?" "I'm falling for you." The words came out raw, almost pained. "God help me, I've tried not to. Told myself it wasn't fair to you, that you needed a friend, not another man wanting things from you. But I can't stop it. Every day I watch you with Hope, with Matty, and I think—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "I think you're the bravest, strongest, most beautiful person I've ever known. And I want—" "What?" she whispered. "What do you want?" "Everything." His eyes burned into hers. "I want to wake up next to you. I want to raise these kids with you. I want to spend whatever years I've got left building a life that's worth living." His hand came up to cup her face, so gentle she could barely feel it. "But more than what I want you to be happy, safe, free. So if you don't feel the same way, if you need me to step back, I will. I'll lock all this down and never mention it again. Just say the word." Josie's throat closed up. She'd been wanted before, wanted as property, wanted as a body to use, wanted as a means to an end. But she'd never been wanted like this, never been given the choice. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to love someone without fear, without waiting for the trap." "Then we learn together. We go slow. We figure it out." His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't felt fall. "I've got nothing but time, Josie, and nowhere I'd rather spend it than with you." She should pull back, should protect herself, should keep that frozen place in her chest locked tight where nothing could hurt it. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, two broken people testing the waters. But then Eli's hand slid into her hair, and Josie's arms came around his neck, and the kiss deepened into something desperate and hungry and real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Josie laughed. actually laughed for the first time in years. "What?" Eli asked, looking dazed. "I just kissed a man because I wanted to, not because I had to, not because someone told me to." She shook her head in wonder. "I didn't know I could still want things." "You can want anything you want." His voice was fierce. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you get it." "I want to stay here, with you, with Maddie and Hope." "Then stay." "I want to not be afraid anymore." "We'll work on that together." "I want—" She stopped, overwhelmed. "I want so many things, I don't know how to name them all." "Then we'll name them one at a time." Eli pulled her close, tucking her head under his chin. "Starting tomorrow. Tonight we just survived the storm." They fell asleep, tangled together by the fire, with Maddie curled beside them, and Hope snuffling in her cradle. The wind howled, the snow piled higher, and somewhere out in that frozen darkness, men with cruel intentions waited for the weather to break. But inside the cabin, 4 broken people had found warmth. And that was enough. The storm lasted 5 days. When it finally passed, the world outside was transformed. Snow lay in drifts higher than the windows. The silence was absolute, that particular hush that only comes after a blizzard. Eli dug them out, while Josie kept the children occupied inside. Maddie, to everyone's surprise, proved remarkably helpful, fetching tools and following instructions with serious concentration. "He wants to contribute," Eli said that evening, watching the boy carefully stack firewood by the hearth. "Wants to feel like he's earning his place." "He doesn't have to earn anything." "I know that. You know that. But it'll take time before he believes it." As the days passed and the snow began to melt, Josie felt a creeping unease. The blizzard had been a cocoon, sealing them away from the world and its dangers. Now that cocoon was opening, and everything that waited outside would come rushing back in. "They'll come," she said to Eli one night. "Wade's men. Once the roads are clear, they'll come." "I know." What do? We prepare. We watch. And we don't let them win. But preparation only went so far. And when Virgil Kane finally returned, he didn't come alone. Josie saw them first 3 riders emerging from the tree line on a gray February morning. Kane in front, flanked by 2 men she didn't recognize. All 3 wore guns on their hips and expressions that promised violence. "Eli!" Her voice came out strangled. He was beside her in an instant, rifle already in hand. "Take the children to the back room. Lock the door. Don't come out no matter what you hear. I'm not leaving you alone." "Josie!" "No!" She met his eyes, fierce despite her terror. "We said together. We meant it." Something passed between them. Then Eli nodded, handed her the pistol from his belt. "Stay behind me. If anything happens, you take the children and run. Don't look back." "Eli." "Promise me." She promised. But they both knew it was a lie. The riders stopped 20 feet from the cabin. Kane's smile was wider than before, uglier. "Morning, Mr. Thornton. Lovely weather we're having." His eyes found Josie behind Eli's shoulder. "And there she is, the property that's caused so much trouble." "You're on my land again." Eli's voice was flat as stone. "I thought we discussed this." "We did. But you see, circumstances have changed." Kane gestured to his companions. "These gentlemen are representatives of the territorial court. They're here to enforce a legal seizure order." He pulled a document from his coat and held it up. Signed by Judge Morrison himself. It declares that the woman known as Clara Josephine Whitmore is the legal property of Mr. Cornelius Wade, and that her current arrangement is in violation of territorial contract law. Josie's blood turned to ice. "That document's a fake," Eli said. "I assure you it's quite genuine. But you're welcome to contest it in court. Of course, that process takes months. In the meantime, the woman comes with us." Kane's smile sharpened. "Along with any offspring produced during her servitude. Mr. Wade has a particular interest in the child." "Hope." They wanted hope. Something in Josie snapped. She stepped forward past Eli, past all her fear. "My daughter is not property." Her voice didn't shake. "Neither am I. Not anymore. Not ever again." Cain's eyebrows rose. "The merchandise speaks. How quaint." He nodded to his companions. "Take her." The two men dismounted. They were big, rough-looking, moving with the confidence of men who'd done this before. Eli raised his rifle. "One more step and I drop you both." "Ah." Cain's voice was almost pitying. The hero. How predictable. He drew his own weapon, a polished revolver that gleamed in the winter sun. "Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Thornton. You're going to lower that rifle. My men are going to take the woman and the child. And if you cooperate, we'll let the boy live. I understand he's not covered by any contract." "You're not taking anyone. I have the law on my side." "The law's been bought and sold like everything else. That don't make it right." "Right," Cain laughed. "What a charming concept. Rights are for people, Mr. Thornton, and that woman is property. The courts have said so. The contracts have said so. And Mr. Wade has said so." His gun came up leveled at Eli's chest. "Now lower your weapon, or I'll shoot you where you stand and take her anyway." Josie's mind raced. 3 against 1. Even if Eli got one of them, the others would cut him down. And then there'd be no one to protect the children. No one to, "Papa." Maddie's voice came from the doorway of the cabin. He disobeyed, crept out of the back room, and now stood there in his 2 big clothes, looking at the guns and the men and the violence about to unfold. "Maddie, get inside." Eli's voice was strained. "Now." But the boy didn't move. His eyes were fixed on Josie, on the tears streaming down her face. "Are they taking you away?" His small voice cracked. "Like they took my mama, Maddie. I won't let them." And before anyone could stop him, Maddie ran not inside, but toward Cain's horse, grabbing at the man's leg, hitting and kicking with all his tiny strength. "Don't take my mama! Don't take her!" Cain cursed his gun, swinging toward the boy. "No!" Josie screamed. Everything happened at once. Eli fired, catching one of the men in the shoulder. Cain's gun went off, missing Maddie by inches as his horse reared. The second man rushed Eli, and they went down in a tangle of limbs and rage. Josie ran for Maddie, scooping him up, turning to flee, and found herself face to face with Cain, who dismounted and crossed the distance in seconds. His gun pressed against her temple. "Enough!" His voice cut through the chaos. Everyone froze. "Drop the rifle, Thornton, or I paint the snow with her brains." Eli, pinned under the second man, went still. "Drop it." The rifle fell from his hands. Cain smiled. "Much better." His free hand grabbed Josie's arm, yanking her close. "Now, we're going to do this properly. The woman and child come with us. Anyone else tries to interfere and I start putting bullets in people." Josie felt Hope's absence like a missing limb. She was still inside in the back room alone. "The baby," she gasped. "Please, she's just a baby." "A baby worth good money, according to Mr. Wade." Cain started dragging her toward the horses. "Move." Eli's voice came from the ground, ragged but fierce. "This isn't over, Cain. I'll find you. I'll tear Wade's operation apart piece by piece. And when I do, you're one man with a rundown ranch and a hero complex." Cain's laugh was ugly. "Face it, Thornton. You lost. You were always going to lose. Men like you don't win. You just die slowly while men like me take everything you love." He shoved Josie toward a horse, and she went not because she'd given up, but because Maddie was still in the line of fire, and Hope was still in the cabin. And sometimes the bravest thing you could do was survive long enough to fight another day. "I love you," she called to Eli as Cain pushed her onto the horse. "Take care of them, please." His eyes found hers, broken, furious, desperate. "I'll come for you. I swear to God, Josie, I'll come for you." And then Cain spurred the horse forward, and Josie watched the cabin, her home, her family, her impossible second chance disappear into the distance. But she didn't cry. She didn't beg. She watched the road ahead, and she planned. Because Josie had been property before, had been bought and sold and broken and rebuilt. And she knew something Cain didn't. You could chain a woman's body, but you couldn't chain her will. Not anymore. Not ever again. The ride to Wade's compound took 2 days. Cain kept Josie bound to the saddle, her wrists tied tight enough to leave welts. They stopped twice, once to water the horses, once to sleep. Both times, Cain kept his gun within reach and his eyes on her. She didn't try to escape. Not yet. Not until she knew where they were going, what she was dealing with, and how to get back to her children. Hope. The name pounded through her mind with every hoofbeat. Her daughter was still in that cabin alone except for Eli and Maddie. Her arms ached with the emptiness of not holding her. "You're quiet," Cain observed on the second day. "Most women cry, beg, threaten. Would it help? No. Then why waste the breath?" Cain laughed, that dry, humorless sound she'd come to hate. "I can see why Wade wants you. You've got spirit. He'll enjoy breaking it." Josie said nothing, but inside something hard and cold was forming. A kernel of rage that grew with every mile. Wade's compound sat in a valley between 2 mountains, accessible only by a narrow road that wound through the trees. The buildings were impressive. A main house, several outbuildings, what looked like dormitories. All of it surrounded by a high wooden fence, with guards posted at regular intervals. A prison disguised as a ranch. "Welcome to your new home," Cain said, as they passed through the gate. "Mr. Wade is expecting you." They dismounted in front of the main house. Cain grabbed Josie's arm and marched her up the steps through a heavy wooden door and into a parlor that would have looked luxurious if it hadn't reeked of cruelty. Cornelius Wade was waiting. He was smaller than Josie expected. Middle-aged, soft around the middle with thinning gray hair and the kind of face that blended into crowds. Nothing about him screamed monster. But his eyes, flat, calculating, devoid of warmth, told her everything she needed to know. "Mrs. Whitmore." His voice was cultured, almost pleasant. "Or should I say Clara? I've been looking forward to meeting you." Josie didn't speak. "She's not much for conversation," Cain reported. "But she's got fight in her. You were right about that." "Of course I was." Wade circled Josie, slowly examining her like merchandise. "Do you know how much trouble you've caused me running away, getting yourself bought by some do-gooder rancher, costing me time and resources? My heart bleeds." Wade's hand shot out, slapping her hard enough to split her lip. Josie didn't make a sound. "Spirit. Yes." Wade wiped his hand on his jacket, fastidious. "We'll address that. Cain tells me you had a child." Josie's blood froze. "A girl, isn't it healthy according to reports?" Wade's smile was thin reptilian. "Newborns fetch good prices, especially girls, especially from proven breeders. If you touch my daughter, you'll what?" Wade cut her off, amused. "Your property, Clara. Your child is property. Your threats are meaningless." He gestured to Cain. "Put her in the East Dormitory. She starts work tomorrow. We'll retrieve the child once she's settled." Cain grabbed her arm, started dragging her toward the door. "One more thing." Wade's voice stopped them. "The man who bought you, Thornton. He's been making inquiries, asking questions in town, trying to find legal ways to challenge my contracts." His smile widened. "He'll fail, of course. But if he persists, I may have to take more direct action, just so we understand each other." Josie turned to face him. "Eli Thornton is worth 100 of you." "Perhaps, but worth doesn't stop bullets." Wade waved his hand dismissively. "Take her away." The East Dormitory was a long building filled with narrow beds, each one occupied by a woman. Some looked broken, dead-eyed. Others still had fire in them, though it was carefully banked, hidden from the guards. All of them bore the marks of hard labor and harder treatment. Cain shoved Josie inside and locked the door behind her. For a moment, she just stood there, taking in her new prison. Then a voice came from the nearest bed. "You're new." Josie turned. The speaker was a woman around her age, dark-skinned with close-cropped hair and a scar running down her left cheek. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. "Yes." "Got a name?" "Josie." "I'm Ruth." The woman sat up, studying her. "You don't look broken yet." "I'm not." "Good. Hold on to that." Ruth glanced toward the door. "Wade likes to break the new ones fast. Makes them easier to manage. Whatever he throws at you, don't let him see you crack." "How long have you been here?" 3 years, give or take." Ruth's voice was matter-of-fact. "Tried to run twice. Second time they caught me at the property line. Wade had me whipped in front of everyone as an example." Josie's stomach turned. "Why haven't you tried again?" "Because running without a plan is suicide, and I've been waiting for the right opportunity." Ruth's eyes held hers. "You got people outside? Someone who might come for you?" Eli's face flashed in Josie's mind. His voice, "I'll come for you. I swear to God." "Yes," she said. "I have someone." "Then we wait. We watch. And when the time comes, we move." Ruth lay back down. "Get some sleep, Josie. Tomorrow's going to be hard." Sleep didn't come. Josie lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Somewhere out there, her daughter was crying for her. Somewhere Eli was planning. Somewhere Maddie was asking why she'd been taken away. She thought about everything she'd learned in 8 years of servitude. How to read people. How to find weaknesses. How to survive. And for the first time, she thought about how to fight back. Eli Thornton had never moved so fast in his life. The moment Kane's riders disappeared over the ridge, he was on his feet, ignoring the blood streaming from the cut on his head, where the guard had pistol-whipped him. "Papa?" Maddie's voice was small, terrified. "Papa, are they gone?" "They're gone." Eli knelt in front of the boy, gripping his shoulders. "Listen to me, Maddie. I need you to be brave. Can you do that? I want Josie back." "I know. I'm going to get her. But first I need you to help me." He turned toward the cabin. "Hope's inside. She needs feeding changing. Can you help me take care of her until I figure out what to do?" Maddie's face was white with fear, but he nodded. "I can help. I want to help." "Good boy." Inside, Hope was screaming, red-faced and furious at being abandoned. Eli scooped her up, tried to soothe her, his hands shaking with rage and fear. "Shh, little one, I've got you. Papa's got you." The word slipped out before he could stop it. Papa. He'd been calling himself that in his head for weeks now, ever since Maddie first whispered it in his sleep. But he'd never said it out loud about Hope. Now, with Josie gone and everything falling apart, it felt right. "Papa's going to fix this," he murmured against Hope's soft hair. "I promise. I'm going to bring your mama home." But promises were easy. Keeping them was harder. He spent the next 2 hours thinking, planning, pacing. Kane had at least a day's head start. Wade's compound was unknown territory, and even if Eli found them, he was one man against an army. He needed help. The thought grated against everything he was. 8 years of isolation, of solving his own problems, of trusting no one. But this wasn't about him anymore. This was about Josie, about the children. He swallowed his pride and rode into town. The general store was quiet when he walked in. Margaret O'Brien, Maggie to everyone who knew her, looked up from behind the counter, her weathered face creasing with concern. "Eli Thornton, you look like hell." "I need help." Something in his voice made her set down the inventory she'd been counting. "What happened?" He told her everything. The auction, Josie, the children, Wade's men, the seizure. His voice cracked twice, but he kept going, forcing the words out. When he finished, Maggie was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Cornelius Wade, I know that name." "You do?" "My sister. 20 years ago. She owed money to a man in Denver. Next thing I knew, she was gone. Sold to some operation that specialized in contract servitude. Maggie's jaw tightened. I never found her, never knew what happened. But I heard the name Wade. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, be angry. Maggie came around the counter, her eyes fierce. What do you need? Information. Wade's compound, where it is, how many guards. Legal help, if there's any to be had. And... He hesitated. Someone to watch the children while I go after her. The children can stay with me. I've got room. Maggie's voice was firm. As for the rest, I know some people. Good people who've lost family to men like Wade. They might be willing to help. Why would they risk it? Because sometimes good people get tired of watching bad people win. She grabbed her coat. Come on, we've got work to do. 3 days later, Eli had a plan. It wasn't a good plan. It was desperate, dangerous, and relied heavily on luck. But it was better than nothing. Maggie had connected him with a network of people who'd been fighting Wade's operation for years. Former victims who'd escaped. Families who'd lost loved ones. A lawyer in Denver who specialized in contract law and had been building a case against Wade for months. The contracts are illegal, the lawyer had told him via telegram. Forged signatures, falsified debts, coerced agreements. I've got enough evidence to bring down his entire operation, but I need a witness willing to testify, someone currently held who can confirm the conditions. Eli had sent back one word, Josie. Now he just had to get her out. The night before he left, Eli sat with Maddie in Maggie's parlor. Hope was asleep in a borrowed cradle, her tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. I have to go away for a few days, Eli said, to bring Josie back. Maddie's face crumpled. Don't go. Please don't go. Everyone leaves. Everyone always leaves. Eli pulled the boy onto his lap, held him tight. I'm coming back. I swear to you, Maddie. I will come back. What if you don't? What if they hurt you, like they hurt my mama? Then Maggie will take care of you and Hope, but that's not going to happen. Eli pulled back, met the boy's eyes. Do you know why? Maddie shook his head. Because I've finally got something worth fighting for, and I don't plan on losing it. He kissed the top of Maddie's head, tucked Hope's blanket tighter around her, and walked out into the night. At Wade's compound, Josie was learning the rhythm of survival. Days started before dawn with hard labor, laundry, cooking, cleaning, whatever tasks the guards assigned. Food was scarce and bad. Sleep was interrupted by random inspections designed to keep everyone off balance. But Josie watched, listened, learned. She mapped the compound in her head, counted guards, noted their schedules, identified which women might be allies and which were too broken to trust, found the weak points in the fencing, the blind spots in the patrol routes. Ruth became her closest confidant. The other woman had survived 3 years in this place by being smart, patient, and ruthless when necessary. Wade's going to send for you soon, Ruth warned on Josie's 4th night. He likes to personally assess the new acquisitions. Don't fight him. It only makes it worse. I'm not fighting anyone. Yet. Yet. Josie met her eyes. I told you. I have someone coming for me. And if they don't come, then I'll get myself out, and I'll take as many of you with me as I can. Ruth studied her for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. I believe you. On the 5th day, Wade sent for her. 2 guards escorted Josie to the main house through the parlor and into a private office. Wade was seated behind a massive desk, papers spread before him. Sit, he said without looking up. She sat. I've been reviewing your file. Wade finally raised his eyes. You've been a model worker. No complaints, no resistance. My overseers are impressed. Josie said nothing. I'll admit I expected more trouble from you. Kane described you as spirited. Was he wrong? No. Then why the compliance? Josie chose her words carefully. Because I've learned that fighting the wrong battles is a waste of energy. I save my strength for the fights that matter. Wade's eyebrows rose. Interesting. And what fights matter to you? The ones I can win. A long pause. Then Wade laughed, a genuine sound that was somehow more unsettling than his anger. I like you, Clara. I don't often say that. He leaned back in his chair. Perhaps we can come to an arrangement. Your daughter is being retrieved as we speak. Once she arrives, you'll both be put to work. No. The word came out before Josie could stop it. Wade's expression cooled. No. My daughter is not property. She's a baby, an innocent child. Josie's voice shook, but she kept going. I'll do whatever you want. Work twice as hard, follow every rule, never cause a moment of trouble. But leave hope out of this. You're not in a position to negotiate. I'm asking, as one human being to another. Josie leaned forward. Please, she's all I have. Wade studied her for a long moment. Something flickered in his flat eyes, not mercy, but perhaps calculation. Your compliance is valuable, he said finally. Your daughter's labor at this age is not. I'll consider your request. He waved his hand. You're dismissed. The guards returned Josie to the dormitory. She went through the motions of the rest of the day, but her mind was spinning. Wade was considering her request. That meant he saw her as valuable, and valuable people had leverage. She just had to figure out how to use it. That night, Ruth shook her awake. Someone's here, she hissed. Outside the fence, asking for you. Josie's heart stopped. What? One of the kitchen girls heard the guards talking. A man showed up at the gate an hour ago. Tall, dark hair, asking about a woman named Josie. Eli. It had to be Eli. Where is he now? They arrested him. Took him to Wade for questioning. The world tilted. Josie grabbed Ruth's arm. I have to get to him. Are you crazy? You'll get yourself killed. I don't care. I have to. The dormitory door burst open. Guards flooded in their torches, casting wild shadows. Clara Whitmore. The lead guard's voice was cold. Come with us. Mr. Wade wants to see you, immediately. They dragged her to the main house. Eli was already there, kneeling on the parlor floor, his hands bound, his face bloody. But he was alive, and when his eyes found hers, they blazed with something fierce and unbreakable. Josie. Her name came out rough, desperate. Eli. Touching. Wade's voice cut through the moment. He stood by the fireplace, watching them with cold amusement. The hero comes to rescue his damsel. How predictable. Let her go. Eli's voice was iron. Let her go and I'll give you whatever you want. I already have everything I want. Wade gestured to a guard. Search him. They found the papers in Eli's coat. Legal documents evidence the lawyer's brief outlining the case against Wade's operation. Wade's face went pale, then red. Where did you get these? Doesn't matter. They've already been filed with the territorial court. The judge has copies. The newspaper has copies. Eli's smile was bloody. You're finished, Wade. Whether you kill me or not, you're finished. For the first time, Josie saw fear in Wade's eyes. Real fear. You're bluffing. Try me. The silence stretched taut as a wire. Then Wade turned to Josie, and his expression shifted to something calculating. Your rancher is clever, he said. But I wonder, is he brave enough to make a trade? What kind of trade? The papers for the woman. Wade smiled thinly. All of them. Every copy. And a signed statement retracting the accusations. Don't. Josie's voice was sharp. Eli, don't you dare. All those other women will remain here, yes. Wade cut her off. But you'll go free, you and your daughter. Isn't that what you wanted? Eli's jaw worked. Josie could see the war on his face, the desperate need to save her, fighting against everything he believed in. Don't do it, she said. I'd rather stay here forever than know I bought my freedom with everyone else's suffering. Josie, I mean it. Her voice broke. If you make that trade, I'll never forgive you, and I'll never forgive myself. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, something passed between them, an understanding deeper than words. Eli turned to Wade. No deal. Wade's face twisted. Then you both die. Maybe. Eli's voice was calm. But so does your operation. Every newspaper in the territory has a copy of that evidence by now. By this time tomorrow, every woman in this compound will know that help is coming, that they're not alone, that men like you don't win forever. I can kill everyone here before anyone arrives. You could, but you won't. Eli's smile was cold. Because you're a businessman, Wade, and dead property doesn't make profit. You'll run. You'll cut your losses, and these women will finally be free. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Wade moved. His hand went to his coat, pulling a pistol, and Josie launched herself at him. She didn't think, didn't plan, just threw her body between the gun and the man she loved. The shot went wide, Wade stumbled backward, and then Eli was free. Somehow, the bonds loosened his fist, connecting with Wade's jaw in a blow that sent the man crashing to the floor. Guards! Wade screamed, but the guards didn't come. Instead, the front door burst open, and people flooded in, women from the dormitories armed with kitchen knives and makeshift weapons. Ruth was at their head, her scarred face fierce with triumph. The compound's ours, she said. The guards are running. They know what's coming. Wade stared at the mob of women advancing on him. For the first time in his miserable life, Cornelius Wade looked truly afraid. You can't do this, he whispered. I have rights. I have contracts. Your contracts are worthless. Josie's voice was cold. And your rights ended the moment you decided we didn't have any. She turned to Ruth. Tie him up. When the authorities arrive, we'll have plenty to tell them. Ruth grinned. With pleasure. And as Wade was dragged away, screaming threats that no one heard, Eli pulled Josie into his arms. You came, she whispered against his chest. You actually came. I promised. His voice was rough. I'll always come for you. Always. She pulled back, looked up at him. Hope Maddie. Safe. With Maggie in town. Waiting for us. The relief hit her so hard she nearly collapsed. Her children were safe. Eli was here. Wade was defeated. I want to go home, she said. Then let's go home. They walked out of Wade's compound together, hand in hand, into a world that finally impossibly felt free. The ride back to town took 3 days. 3 days of exhaustion relief and a bone-deep weariness that went beyond physical. Josie slept in fits and starts, jerking awake at every sound, her body still trained for danger, even though her mind knew it was over. Eli stayed close, never pushing, never demanding. Just there, solid and steady, a reminder that she wasn't alone anymore. You should rest, he said on the second night, watching her stare into the fire. I can't stop thinking about them, the women we left behind. Ruth's handling things. The authorities are on their way. Wade's operation is finished. I know, but... Josie wrapped her arms around herself. Some of them have been there for years, Eli. Years. And I got out in less than a week. You got out because you fought. Because you refused to break. He moved closer, his shoulder touching hers. And because people on the outside cared enough to help. I got lucky. No. His voice was firm. You survived. There's a difference. They sat in silence for a while, watching the flames dance. Then Josie said, What happens now? After we get back? Whatever you want to happen. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. Eli turned to look at her. For the first time in your life, Josie, you get to choose. Where you live. What you do. Who you're with. His voice softened. I want you to stay. God knows I want that more than I've wanted anything in years. But if you need to go somewhere else, start fresh, I'll understand. Where would I go? Anywhere. East, west, doesn't matter. I've got some money saved. Enough to set you up with a place of your own if that's what you want. Josie stared at him. This man who'd spent everything he had to buy her freedom, who'd risked his life to save her, who was now offering to let her walk away if that's what she needed. You'd do that? Just let me go. If it made you happy. Why? Eli's jaw tightened. Because loving someone means wanting what's best for them, even if it's not you. The words hung in the air between them. Loving someone. He'd said it like it was obvious, like it was a fact of nature, like the sun rising or the seasons changing. Eli, you don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for... I love you too. He went still. I love you. Josie repeated stronger this time. I love the way you never demanded anything from me. The way you let me find my feet at my own pace. The way you look at Maddie and Hope like they hung the moon. Her voice cracked. I love that you came for me. That you didn't give up. That you chose me over and over even when it cost you everything. Josie. I'm not going anywhere. She reached out, took his face in her hands. I'm staying. Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because this is where I want to be. With you. With our children. Building something real. His eyes glistened in the firelight. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He kissed her, then deep and desperate and full of promise. And Josie kissed him back with everything she had, letting herself believe, for the first time, that this was real. This was permanent. This was hers. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Eli smiled. That rare, genuine smile that transformed his weathered face. Then, let's go home. They reached town on the third day. Maggie met them at the edge of her property, her face creased with relief. Thank God. I was starting to think, we're fine. Josie slid down from the horse, her legs unsteady. The children, inside, waiting. Josie ran. The door burst open and she was through it, her eyes scanning the room until they found what they were looking for. Maddie was on the floor playing with wooden blocks. Hope was in a cradle by the fire, her small fists waving at nothing. Josie! Maddie's shriek cut through the air. He launched himself at her, hitting her legs with enough force to nearly knock her over. You came back. Papa said you would, but I was scared. I was so scared. I'm here. Josie dropped to her knees, pulling him close. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise. She held him for a long moment, breathing in the smell of soap, and little boy, feeling his small body shake with sobs of relief. Then Hope started crying, demanding attention, and Josie laughed through her own tears. Someone's jealous. She scooped Hope from the cradle, cradling her daughter against her chest. The baby immediately quieted her tiny fingers, gripping Josie's dress. Mama's here, Josie whispered. Mama's here now. Eli appeared in the doorway, watching them with an expression that made Josie's heart ache. Maggie stood beside him, dabbing at her eyes with her apron. Well, Maggie said gruffly, I suppose you'll be wanting to get home. I've packed some supplies, enough to last you a week or so. Thank you. Josie stood Hope still in her arms, Maddie pressed against her side. For everything. You saved us. You saved yourselves. I just helped a little. Maggie's face softened. You've got a good man there, Josie. Don't let him go. I don't intend to. They loaded the wagon and headed for the ranch. The ride was quiet, peaceful. Maddie fell asleep against Eli's shoulder. Hope dozed in Josie's arms. The world felt new, washed clean. When the cabin finally came into view, Josie felt tears burn her eyes. Home. She was home. "Welcome back," Eli said quietly. "It's good to be back." The first weeks after their return were a blur of recovery and reconnection. Wade's operation had been dismantled completely. Ruth had testified before the territorial court, along with a dozen other women. The evidence Eli had gathered proved decisive. Wade was arrested, his assets seized, his network of co-conspirators scattered to the winds. "He'll hang," Maggie reported during one of her visits. "The judge made sure of that. Crimes against women and children, they said. About time someone paid attention." Josie felt nothing but hollow relief. Wade's death wouldn't undo what he'd done, wouldn't give back the years stolen from Ruth and the others, but at least he couldn't hurt anyone else. "What happens to the women?" she asked. "Some are going home to families. Some are staying in the territory starting over." Maggie paused. "Ruth's thinking of opening a boarding house in town, a safe place for women who need somewhere to go." "That sounds like Ruth. She asked about you, said to tell you she's grateful. I didn't do anything." "You gave them hope." Maggie's voice was firm. "Sometimes that's enough." As winter slowly released its grip and the first signs of spring appeared, life on the ranch settled into a rhythm. Eli worked the cattle. Josie managed the house. Maddie learned to read sounding out words with fierce concentration. Hope grew bigger, stronger, her first smile appearing one morning like a gift. And through it all, the family they'd built grew stronger too. "Mama," Maddie said one afternoon, the word still new and precious on his tongue. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Are you and Papa going to get married?" Josie looked up from the bread she was kneading. Maddie was watching her with those serious eyes. Hope balanced carefully on his lap. "Would you like that?" "Yes." No hesitation. "Then we'd be a real family, like in the stories." "We're already a real family, Maddie. Marriage is just paper." "But paper matters. You said so. You said the papers were what made you free." Out of the mouths of children. That night, after Maddie and Hope were asleep, Josie found Eli on the porch staring up at the stars. "Maddie asked me today if we were going to get married." Eli went very still. "What did you tell him?" "That we're already a family." She moved to stand beside him. "But he made a good point. About papers. About things being official." "Josie, I know we haven't talked about it. I know we're still figuring things out. But," she took a breath, "I want to be your wife, Eli. Not because I need protection, or because I'm scared. Because I love you. Because I want the world to know that I chose you." Eli turned to face her. In the moonlight, his expression was raw, vulnerable. "I was going to ask you," he said. "Been carrying this around for weeks, trying to find the right moment." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. Simple silver, nothing fancy. But Josie's breath caught anyway. "It was my mother's," Eli said quietly. "The only thing of hers I kept. I always figured I'd give it to someone someday. Someone who mattered." "Eli, Josie Whitmore." His voice was rough. "Will you marry me? Be my wife? Let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." Tears streamed down her face. "Yes. Yes, 1,000 times, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had always belonged there. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." They kissed under the stars, two broken people who'd somehow found their way to each other. The wedding was simple. Reverend Thomas Blackwood, the preacher who'd helped Eli through his darkest years, made the trip out to the ranch. Maggie came along with Ruth and a few of the other women who'd survived Wade's operation. Even some folks from town showed up curious about the rancher who'd taken on a monster and won. Josie wore a dress Maggie had helped her sew, pale blue cotton that matched her eyes. Eli wore his best shirt, the one without patches. Maddie stood beside them, as ring-bearer, proud and serious. Hope gurgled happily in Ruth's arms. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Blackwood began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Samuel Elijah Thornton and Clara Josephine Whitmore." Josie barely heard the words. She was too busy looking at Eli, at this man who'd given her everything and asked for nothing, who'd fought for her when no one else would, who'd chosen her over and over until she'd learned to choose herself. "Do you, Samuel, take Clara to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do you part?" "I do." "And do you, Clara, take Samuel to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do you part?" Josie looked into Eli's eyes, saw the love there steady and certain. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Reverend Blackwood smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Eli cupped her face in his hands and kissed her gentle and fierce, all at once. The small crowd cheered. Maddie threw flower petals he'd been saving for weeks. And Josie laughed, really laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. "I love you, Mrs. Thornton," Eli murmured against her lips. "I love you too, Mr. Thornton." They celebrated into the evening with food and music and more joy than Josie had known in years. When the guests finally left and the children were tucked into bed, Eli took her hand and led her to the porch. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever thought possible." "Good." He pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "That's all I've ever wanted. For you to be happy." They stood there in the quiet darkness, listening to the wind in the pines and the distant call of an owl. And Josie felt something settle in her chest. Not the absence of fear that would take longer to fade, but the presence of something stronger. Peace, belonging, home. "Eli." "Yeah." "Thank you for saving me." "I didn't save you." His voice was soft. "You saved yourself. I just gave you somewhere to land." She thought about that. About the auction block, the chains, the years of being owned. About the woman she'd been when Eli bought her freedom, broken, terrified, unable to imagine a future worth living. And about the woman she was now, a mother, a wife, a survivor. "We saved each other," she said finally. "That's how it works, isn't it? Broken people finding other broken people and building something together. Something beautiful. Something real." Spring turned to summer. Summer faded into fall. And the Thornton family grew. Matty thrived in his new life, his silences gradually filling with words, then sentences, then long rambling stories about the adventures he and Hope would have when she was bigger. He called Eli Papa without hesitation now, and Mama slipped off his tongue like it had always been there. Hope grew from a newborn into a baby with strong lungs and an iron grip, crawling across the cabin floor with determined focus. She said her first word on a crisp October morning, "Mama," and Josie cried for an hour. The ranch expanded too. Eli took on a hired hand, a young man named Thomas, who'd lost his family to fever and needed somewhere to belong. He fit into their makeshift family like he'd always been there. And through it all, Josie discovered something she'd never expected. She was happy. Not the fragile, temporary happiness that comes from momentary relief, but something deeper, something that had roots. "What are you thinking about?" Eli asked one evening. They were sitting on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains, the children playing in the yard below. "Everything. Nothing." Josie leaned against his shoulder. "I was thinking about how different my life is now. How different I am. Good different. The best different." She watched Matty chase a butterfly, his laughter ringing through the evening air. "A year ago, I was property. I'd given up hope of ever being anything else. And now," her voice caught, "now I have you, and them, and this. You deserve all of it. I'm starting to believe that." She looked up at him. "It took a while, but I'm starting to believe I deserve to be happy." "You do?" His arm tightened around her. You always did. The world just needed to catch up. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the light fade. Eli. Yeah. I want another baby. He went very still. You sure? I want to have a child that wasn't born in chains. A child that's ours from the beginning. She turned to face him. I want to fill this house with children, Eli. Children who'll never know what it's like to be afraid. Who'll grow up knowing they're loved. His eyes glistened. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. Then let's do it. Let's build something so big and loud and full of love that nothing can ever break it. He kissed her long and slow. I love you, Josie Thornton. I love you too. A year later, their daughter Sarah was born, named for the wife Eli had lost, carried by the woman he'd found. She had Josie's eyes and Eli's stubborn chin, and she screamed louder than both her older siblings combined. She's perfect, Eli whispered, looking at the baby in Josie's arms. She's ours. Maddie peered over the edge of the bed, Hope balanced on his hip with the practiced ease of a 7-year-old who'd been helping with babies since before he could read. Can I hold her? Sit down first. Support her head. Maddie sat, and Josie carefully transferred Sarah into his arms. The baby stopped crying immediately, her tiny eyes fixing on her brother's face. She likes me. Of course she does. You're her big brother. Hope reached out a chubby hand to touch the baby's cheek. Sissy. That's right, sweetheart. That's your little sister. Josie looked at her children, all 4 of them now, and felt her heart expand until she thought it might burst. These were hers. This family, this life, this love. All of it built from broken pieces held together by choice and stubbornness and the refusal to give up. We did good, Eli said quietly. We did. You did. He took her hand. None of this would exist without you. None of this would exist without us. That evening, after the children were asleep and the cabin was quiet, Josie sat at the table with her journal. She'd been keeping it since those early days, recording everything, the fears, the victories, the small moments that added up to a life. She opened to a fresh page and began to write. October 17th. Sarah Abigail Thornton was born today, named for the women who came before her, loved by the family she was born into. She has 10 fingers, 10 toes, and a cry that could wake the dead. She is perfect. I used to think freedom was about not being owned, about having papers that said you belong to yourself. But I've learned it's more than that. Freedom is being able to choose where you live, who you love, how you spend your days, to choose to stay when you could leave, to choose to hope when hope seems impossible. I was sold for $200 on a frozen December night. I was property merchandise, a thing to be used and discarded. But a man named Eli Thornton looked at me and saw a person. He bought my freedom and then gave me something more valuable, the chance to find out who I was when I wasn't afraid. I am Josie Thornton now, wife of Eli, mother of Maddie, Hope, and Sarah. I am loved. I am safe. I am free. And I am finally, truly home. She closed the journal and set down her pen. Through the window she could see Eli checking on the horses, his silhouette familiar and beloved. Upstairs the children slept peacefully. The fire crackled in the hearth, the wind whispered through the pines. Everything she'd ever wanted, everything she'd never dared to hope for. Hers. Josie stood stretched and walked to the window. Eli looked up, saw her watching, and smiled. That rare, genuine smile that still made her heart skip after all this time. She smiled back. And in that moment, standing in the home they'd built together, surrounded by the family they'd created, Josie knew that the scared girl in chains was finally, irrevocably gone. In her place stood a woman who had survived the worst the world could offer. A woman who had found love in the ashes of despair. A woman who had chosen freedom not once, but every single day. A woman who was no longer property, no longer merchandise, no longer afraid. She was Josie Thornton, and she was free.